Hello everyone, I'm Councilman Paul Krekorian, and I'm pleased that you could join us again for this latest in our series of workshops that we're doing about the challenges of getting through the COVID pandemic. And today we're going to be talking to three really extraordinary guests about what's happening in higher education and how are our colleges dealing with the challenges of COVID-19. Maybe if you are a high school student or a parent of a high school student and you're looking forward and wondering what that experience is going to be like, our guests will be able to talk at length about exactly those sorts of issues. Obviously, 2020 has been a year like no other, and the changes that we have been forced to go through has impacted every part of our society, every part of our economy, and higher education is no exception. But if there's one thing that's always true about academia, it figures out a way to make it work and to improvise as necessary and move forward. And our guests today will be examples, I think, of how our colleges are doing that. We have guests from each level of higher education so that we can get a broad range of perspectives, and I'm looking forward to speaking to each of them. We have with us Karen Dar, who is Vice President of Academic Affairs at Los Angeles Valley College, which just happens to be in the 2nd Council District, and we're very proud of the way Valley College has been such an important part of my district and played an important part of the preparation of young people for the economy of the future. And Karen, I'm very pleased to be able to welcome you and thank you for being here. Also with us is Dr. Matthew Kahn, who is the Interim Vice Provost in the Division of Academic Affairs at Cal State University at Northridge. And of course, CSUN is one of the academic treasures of the San Fernando Valley, and Dr. Kahn, we're pleased to have you here as well. And then finally, we have with us Winston Crisp, who is the Vice President for Student Affairs at the University of Southern California. Although he's relatively new to USC, having joined the university last year, he has a long history as a university administrator in many different positions. As Vice President for Student Affairs, he oversees everything that deals with student services at USC for the nearly 50,000 students that are at USC now. So, and Winston, just one other thing I need to say to you is fight on. Glad to have you as a part of the Trojan family. So again, welcome everyone. I'm pleased to have you here. And I'd like to start, if we can, with just an overview of how you have begun this academic year at each of your institutions. To what degree are students back in class? If you're still 100% remote, how is that working? If you could just kind of give an overview for how you have launched into this academic year at this very unprecedented time. And why don't we go ahead and start. Karen, would you like to kick us off? How are things going at LA Valley College?
Well, they're going quite well, actually, considering the circumstances that we're working with, but there's been a lot of challenges that we've been able to overcome. We learned a lot when we actually closed, or I shouldn't say that, we actually had a lot of our classes during spring that had to go onto remote and align immediately. So we pivoted quite well when we did that and learned a lot from that particular experience, so that we were very well prepared for being able to promote most of our classes to be online or remote in the fall semester. We have certain classes that are considered to be hard to convert classes, in the sense that there are activities and laboratories that are required and necessary for students to be able to have access to equipment that they would never have access at home or elsewhere, so they need to come on campus in order to be able to finish it. We align our very limited amount of offerings that we have face-to-face on campus with the essential services that state of California has identified that it was all right to have instruction and education for students to be able to align to meet those essential services. And so for us, that ends up being some nursing classes, respiratory therapy classes, as well as manufacturing classes, and emergency technician classes for ambulance rides and things like that. So there's very few amount of students that are coming onto campus. Everything that can be remote, classroom instruction or services wise, we are putting onto remote. So it's very quiet on our campus. But at the same time, we are really focusing our attention and making sure that those students who are part of those essential services and being trained for that workforce in the next steps really help us in our city and help us in our county are well prepared in order to be able to support our endeavors in the future.
Thank you. And Matthew, at CSUN, how has the transition gone? How did you do it at the end of last year, and how is it different as you go forward this year?
Sure. So similar to what Karen said around Valley College, Northridge pivoted in March, like all of our campuses, and experienced some serious crisis. We understood that our students were having a difficult time both responding to the demands around the academic program as well as the demands in their families and in their communities. And it became very clear that the digital divide that we all are aware of is alive and well in our universities and certainly at the Cal State. So one of the first challenges we had was to make sure that our students had access to the technology so they could continue their classes online. And what we learned was that as well as we were doing it, we weren't doing it well enough. And many of the assumptions we had, such as most students have technology that works and internet connectivity, was simply not accurate. And so we did a number of things to get us through that crisis mode, including loaning laptops and other devices to as many students as possible, allowing students to come and park in the parking lot, of course, socially distanced literally in their cars, if they had cars, to access internet connectivity. And for those students who didn't have cars or the ability to get to campus, to actually provide hotspots so they can connect remotely. And I will say that spring was very, very difficult, as I imagine it was at most institutions. So as we began looking at fall semester, we wanted to make sure that we were moving away from crisis management and moving into best practices. So as you likely know, the CSU Chancellor, Tim White, declared that Cal State will remain primarily virtual in fall 20 as early as May. So we had the entire summer to prepare. And we, on the Northridge campus, worked very hard to make sure that all of our faculty and staff that were student-facing had appropriate training so that we could meet the demands around fall semester ready to go. We have approximately 2,000 faculty at Cal State Northridge, and we were able to put approximately 1,200 through some type of online training or workshop over the summer to make sure that they were ready for that next step. And we spent a lot of time identifying best practices in virtual and online learning so that as we came back in fall, we'd be prepared. So we have, as you know, about 38,000 students head count, and the vast majority of those students remain virtual in fall 20 and into spring 21. We're going to stay primarily virtual. So only about 2.5% of our classes are face-to-face in fall, and it will likely get up to around 4% of our classes face-to-face in spring. And as Karen noted in other institutions, we are primarily focusing on those essential workforce training classes, those applied and professional classes, but also classes that incorporate labs that utilize specialized equipment. So an example might be engineering with lasers and so forth. We're not going to be able to provide students the opportunity to do that kind of lab experience remotely. But in those other areas where we can provide a remote or virtual experience to complete the lab, we're doing so. So the goal for fall, which we're now more than halfway through, and for spring, is to make sure we're doing it right by our students. And we know that that's a heavy lift. And we want to honor the significant work that our students are doing in this virtual mode by bringing our best game to them so that they can continue to move forward. And one of the things that I'll get to later when we have a chance that I want to speak to is this challenge we have around not only continually improving the student experience in the best of circumstances, but making sure that during a crisis or pandemic like COVID, that none of our students are falling behind. And so we're really looking hard to make sure that students who are having trouble are getting the resources and support they need so that we can meet that demand in real time and assure to the extent possible that all of our students are matriculating successfully.
And I do want to come back to that point because that is one of the great challenges that all students are facing, K through 12 and in higher education, is that ability to monitor individualized performance and provide the academic support. So I do want to come back to that with all of your institutions. But before we do, Winston, you joined USC a little over a year ago and took this position just in time for some significant crisis management. So how did the transition go last spring, and what are things looking like at USC this year, this fall semester, as you've begun the year under the cloud of COVID?
Thank you, Councilperson Krekorian, both for the invite and for the question. I would say that my response is going to be somewhat similar to both the responses of Karen and Matthew. There are a lot of parallels that all of the institutions have to face and have had to face. And like them, in the spring, caught somewhat unexpectedly, we had to transition very quickly, just like everyone else did, away from live in-person classes to our online offerings. And as both of them have indicated for their schools, that was a tremendous undertaking. There were assumptions that had to be questioned, as Matthew has stated, about people's access to technology, the situations that they find themselves in at home, and whether or not that is suitable to study. We had to provide hotspots. We had to create programs for providing laptops and other materials so that people could stay engaged, and we did that. We also had the tremendous challenge of a faculty adjusting to having to figure out new ways of teaching and new ways of engaging material with students. And we've had hundreds and thousands at this point of trainings from our Center for Educational Excellence that helps with our faculty to help train them and to transition them so that they can be better. But we got it done. And I think it was done well. I think generally speaking, the vast majority of our students are tremendously intelligent and resourceful and resilient, and they have made what has been a difficult adjustment, and we continue to work very hard to try to help them to make those adjustments as well. As we got close to the fall, we had hopes, as many did, that we might be able to have a higher percentage or some percentage of in-person education going on in the fall. But as you know, the circumstances in the country and in the city and county as far as COVID did not allow for that. And so we, like the other schools, are effectively completely online right now, with the only exceptions being, as they have indicated, certain clinical type experiences that you just simply cannot do, mostly on the medical or occupational or technical side. But even then, we've had to adjust and even to do that in ways that create different workspaces and separation and safety and all of that. So we're essentially trying very hard to maintain the safety of our community and the safety of our students, our faculty, and our staff, while at the same time provide the kind of high-level integrated education that our students certainly deserve. We're certainly having to figure out how to do that in different ways. And the levels of stress and strain, our students are not just dealing with COVID-19, but the social and political and economic situations worldwide all affect them and all add up to stress. And so one of the things that we are really experiencing and working very hard at is trying to figure out ways to make this as least stressful for our students as we can.
Well, and you've raised a couple points that I want to definitely follow up on. One is that it sounds as though at each of your institutions, right now the number of students on campus is quite low. But even for those who are there, you do need to take some serious steps to ensure their safety as well as the safety of your faculty and your staff. And I imagine that looking forward to the spring and to the following academic year, you're all thinking about infrastructure changes and other kinds of safety measures to take to address this for the longer haul. So Winston, can you talk about maybe some of the things that USC has done to ensure that the campus is as safe as it can be right now, physically safe, and then I'd like to hear from the others as well.
Yes, happy to do that. And we've tried to do that on a number of levels. First of all, the physical aspect of the campus. Campuses have different physical setups, and some are well fenced in, others are wide open. So from campus to campus, this will always be different. But we have started physically. I mean, we have changed how our bathrooms function. We have changed how people walk around and get around. We are dealing differently with food service. We have created traffic lanes, signage all over campus that create and make sure everyone understands what our expectations about safety are. If you're going to come to campus, before you come to campus, you have to go through a safety screening, either on an app that you can download and use, that's called the Trojan Checker, or when you get to campus, you can be screened at the gate. So we do screenings for everyone that's coming through so that we know that has taken place. There's testing that happens. Not everyone is being tested every day, but we're doing surveillance testing. We're testing things in the environment. So a lot of that happens on the medical side. We have changed our physical layout to create more open spaces and opportunities for social distancing. So in every way that we can physically, we have tried to transform the campus so that it is uniquely able to deal with this COVID environment. But we are also doing things like the surveillance testing. And as I said, we have hotlines that we have set up. We have changed many of our health offerings to virtual health offerings so that people can access them. We simply are doing everything that we can think of to make sure both the physical environment and the environment for our people is as safe as we can make it.
Matthew, how about at CSUN? What sorts of investments and safety measures are being implemented?
So we're somewhat similar. One thing I'll say is that because we have so few students on campus, we have been able to accommodate a lot of the COVID protocols in a pretty straightforward manner. So though we have about 2.5% of our classes face-to-face, they're being operated in a hybrid format. So we really only have 300 to 400 students on campus at any one time. And as you may know, Northridge is a very large campus, so we're able to spread that load out pretty well. So all of the classes, all of the physical rooms that we're doing instruction in, of course, have occupancy limits, as is the case everywhere. We're down to about 1/4 or 25% of the occupancy for any one room. So we're breaking classes down into smaller subgroups. Obviously, we're requiring social distancing, mask wearing, all these types of things. And we have not only changed the structure of the flow of how people move, but changed furniture and other kinds of if you will, guides that help people comply in a manner that becomes second nature. We also have the health pre-screening before any student or staff person comes onto campus. We're required to do the health pre-screening, in which we identify whether we've experienced any kind of symptoms or been in any kind of exposure type of situation or had any travel or temperature, that type of thing. The larger question really is, can we bring students onto campus for other kinds of activities? And so we've been working with LA County Department of Public Health to see when it's possible to bring smaller numbers of students onto campus to provide them with some kind of meaningful university experience beyond the academic that they may be experiencing virtually. So, for example, we have, as all of our campuses do, a whole generation of first-time freshmen that have never been on campus, that virtually have, I won't say virtually, that literally have never stepped onto the Northridge campus or have only been on campus during the tour. And so we understand that for many of these students, the relationship to the campus only through the virtual instruction is highly problematic. And so we're hoping to get in smaller groups, again, socially distanced and perfectly appropriate in COVID responsible ways, students experiencing the campus. The other thing that we're doing to disincentivize students from gathering socially is making it, how do I say this, less comfortable on campus. We have no food service that's available on campus, for example. So when students come to campus and take their class, they're leaving the campus afterwards. We both want to be welcoming because we love our students and want them to be comfortable, but we don't want students congregating on campus. And so students are, of course, informed they need to bring water bottles, they need to bring food or lunch or snacks if they would like to have that on campus. They're perfectly welcome to stay on campus and have those snacks and so on, but they can't buy that on campus. As a consequence, we haven't had gatherings of students as some campuses have. So when we look across our system, the 23 campuses of the CSU, the areas that have had higher outbreaks have tended to have those outbreaks as a consequence of social gatherings of students, either in off-campus housing, in social areas, bars, et cetera. And Cal State Northridge, having long been certainly a residential plus commuter campus with more commuter students, we haven't had that kind of local off-campus area where students have congregated. And while that is not an ideal university experience in the sense that we want students to congregate and know each other in a period like a pandemic, that has actually worked to our advantage. So to balance that, though, we are, and I'm sure this is true at USC and at Valley and at other institutions, we are doubling down our clubs and other social activities through virtual opportunities, and thereby bringing students into the university experience on a virtual basis rather than on that physical basis.
So that raises two really important points that are a little bit in juxtaposition, and so I'm going to ask them both, and then I'd like to invite anybody who'd like to speak to this. This change in the college experience that you've just described really takes away a lot of what people have looked forward for much of their young lives in going to college. The experience of making lifelong friendships, the experience of attending sporting events and belonging to clubs and doing service projects and all of the sorts of things that involve human interaction. And so because of that, I would imagine that the stress level has gone up, that it's harder for college students who already have to wrestle with all of those sorts of mental health issues. It's harder for them to grapple with it because they're not interacting with friends, and they don't have personal connection with their faculty or with the people at the student activities center or any of those sorts of things. So on the one hand, I'd like you to speak about that, the mental health part of increased isolation. But the flip side of that also is the physical safety issue that upon which interaction is based. And so when we have so many young people that are continuing to gather in large numbers, and maybe not on campus, but they're going out and doing large social events, probably because they're going a little stir crazy. So when you see gatherings of young people not wearing masks, not social distancing, it's not only a risk to them, it's a risk to our entire society, and it's slowing down our ability to reopen institutions in a normal way. So how are you all dealing with those sorts of stress and mental health issues? And also, how are you dealing with the education part of getting your students to be responsible about taking care of their own safety and the safety of the community?
So,
Karen,
one thing
you
I'll just
didn't have a chance to speak earlier, and shall we start with you, and then we'll go around the horn.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm sure my response is going to be very similar to the responses of my colleagues as well. We really are acknowledging the fact that there's a lot of great amount of stress that our students are dealing with, a lot of stress that is associated with COVID, associated with the lack of the consistent kind of interaction that they normally would have if they were on campus and interacting with their friends and their faculty members. And we're doing everything that we possibly can in order to be able to reach out to them and show them that there are support services that are available on campus, as well as with our community partners, to really be able to embrace them while they're going through these kinds of hardships. We've always had at Los Angeles Valley College embraced the fact that we have a very diverse student population with a wide range of different kinds of issues that they are experiencing. And of course, it's all going to be just elevated now because of the fact that they are in these circumstances that we are living in right now. So we have been really proactively opening up various different services on campus remotely, but a welcome center, a way of being able to communicate to students through direct targeted messages to say, hey, we haven't heard from you in a while. Can you go ahead and contact us and let us know where you're at? Do you need any assistance and help? Can we connect you with a counselor? Can we connect you with some support with your homeless, or some support if you are hungry, or other types of things that are needed, as they may feel that they're quite isolated on their own right now and not being on a campus. There's been a lot of proactive efforts that we have made to be able to provide that kind of support to our students and let them know that they're not alone and that we are here. It is difficult to have that college experience, and even in the community college, we have a lot of different activities that take place on campus, a lot of very great events and exposure to different kinds of experiences that is very difficult for us to be able to replicate in our online remote environment. But at the same time, there's been a lot of extra efforts that's been done by the student clubs and experts that have been done by our student services division as well, reaching out and providing some sort of campus experience on a remote level and being able to interact with students who are signing into campuses so that they feel that they are part of the community. And again, ensuring them that this will pass, and at some point we're going to have real on-campus activities in the future, and to be excited about that and know that we are there for them while we are waiting for that to happen.
Winston, how is USC dealing with the fact that students are missing so much of the USC experience?
Yes, and as Karen said, I suspect a lot of these answers are going to be somewhat similar. There are challenges here. Students have been looking forward to coming to campus, not only to engage in the academic experiences in the classroom experiences and other experiences like that, but also for the community and for meeting people and for all of that. And it is challenging that can't happen right now. We have done a number of things to try to deal with that. On the one hand, we really have increased our offerings online. We've created a USC Welcome experience that is completely virtual. We've created virtual career fairs, we just had a virtual Trojan Family Weekend. So we continue to try to create opportunities for engagement and to create opportunities for our students to engage with each other, even if it is not live and in person. We have a student basic needs department that is there to help students with the challenges that they face, whether that be from inability to study because of the living situation that they find themselves in, or lack of technology resources like we've talked about, to help with navigating rental issues and other things like that. So we're trying to create all of the resources that students would be able to access if they were physically on campus, still allowing them to have the opportunity to engage in those ways, even if it's virtual. We are creating new tools that allow students to create their own events. One of the things that students have been telling us is that you know, there's always Zoom fatigue. There's always the fatigue of, okay, the university's created another thing for us to participate in, but we're also providing them tools so that they can create their own gatherings. And we're working very hard, as Karen said, and as everyone has said, with LA County and the city on our hopes to be able to expand, to create more exceptions so that we could create even more opportunities for the students that we have around us to come in. On the other hand, it is a challenge when you have a population that is really desiring that kind of communication and that kind of engagement, to expect people to sort of isolate themselves and to not engage in some of the behaviors that we are having troubles with. I will say this, though, it's not as much for us these days, big parties or things like that, although I would not pretend that that's not still going on some part. It's even the everyday, just a small group of people gathering to try to watch a television show or play Monopoly or a board game that we still have to be very careful about in terms of safety. But it really comes down to trying to provide as many enriching opportunities as we can for our students to engage with each other, with our faculty, with members of the community in every way that we can, even though much of that right now is virtual.
So you just reminded me about an issue that I hadn't thought of, and that's the Greek system at USC. How are the fraternities and sororities functioning? Are members actually going and living in the houses? Is that entirely shut down? Is it some hybrid? How is the Greek system managing?
It's a bit of a hybrid. Just like the rest of the off-campus community, we have students living all over LA. The houses are not open like they were in a regular environment. Some of them are completely closed. Some of them have very limited students living in them. We have been working with all of our off-campus landlords, including the fraternity house corporations, but also our large student renters and even some of the smallest, to try to make sure that they have all of the information that we have, that we work with them to try to make sure that the environments that they are creating are as safe as possible. We are engaging in social media campaigns and educational campaigns to try to help our students understand that, notwithstanding some of the challenges that we have, that we truly all have to be together in this as we work for the health of our entire community and to get these universities back up. By and large, I think our students are doing a tremendous job of that, notwithstanding the smaller percentage of things that you see or hear about. They are going on. But I don't want it to be lost that the vast majority of our community are working really hard on these safety issues and on trying to make sure that we can get where we need to be as soon as we can.
It's good to hear. Matthew, you mentioned earlier the need to make a little bit of, well, a lot of extra effort to ensure monitoring of students to guarantee academic success and to make sure that people are keeping up. And in this environment that we're in now, some of those resources are less available, I would imagine. Library facilities may be less available. Some mentorship and tutoring kind of opportunities may be less available. So how are you grappling with both monitoring performance and bringing the resources to bear to help lift up students who may be struggling?
So counterintuitively, we actually have all of our services available to our students virtually. So while the library itself is not open, all of the services in the library are in fact available, and we're even acquiring lockers so that physical books can be checked out by students via a locker system, which should be in place by spring semester. But more to the point, how do we know when students are in need if they're not showing up in class or walking into the student health center or student counseling? And what we're recognizing is that we not only need our service providers to be attentive, affirmative, and intentional in reaching out to our students, but we're asking our faculty, our department chairs and our associate deans to function in many ways as educational concierges. They are the eyes and ears of the campus in a virtual environment when they most likely are the first people who are going to have contact with students who may be in crisis, and that crisis may not be obvious. So we are asking our faculty and providing them with resources to identify when students may need some additional support, whether that be additional academic support or whether the student may need some additional support beyond the academics. And that clearly is not easy to do. We know prior to COVID that, and this is true across the nation, that as many as 25% or more of university-age students are experiencing some kind of mental health challenge or hurdle, whether that be anxiety or whether that be something more specific. And we have been, and this is again true on all campuses everywhere, expanding our counseling services and making sure that we're able to provide students with the kind of support that they need to be successful. Layer a global pandemic on top of that, and we recognize how difficult this is for our students. And Cal State's a unique place. I mean, every campus is unique and every type of system is unique. Cal State is a particularly unique place in the sense that we have a significant community of students who are in need of basic needs and basic support, who, I mean, half our students are Pell eligible. We are in a space that requires that we are finding ways to support students well beyond the academics, both because they need that support, but also because the academic success depends on that support as well. And so ensuring that students are aware that services are available has been in and of itself a bit of a challenge. We spend a lot of time pre-COVID, outside of the pandemic, communicating what's available so that as students need services, they're able to access them at that moment, right in time, that kind of thing. With COVID, we are aware that students may not be hearing the messages, opening the emails, checking the web pages in the way that they might otherwise have experienced the information flow. I mentioned earlier our concern around student success and in particular around retention. So in the California State University system, you may be aware there is a system-wide Graduation Initiative 2025 program, which has provided resources from the state and from the system to each campus to help those campuses, certainly including Northridge, meet very specific student success goals: time to graduation, completion rates, retention, and these types of things. And we have been moving very consistently around continual improvement in meeting these goals. And while we have several years to go and lots of work ahead of us, we've been doing very well. We're very concerned right now because while our fall 20 retention rate was higher than our fall 19, which was higher than our fall 18, we don't know what our fall 21 retention rate is going to be. When we say retention, we mean third semester returning students. So students who successfully completed first and second semester, who are now looking at that third semester, may have had some challenges, may have a course or two they need to repeat. Is that impacting their ability to come back? And while we don't have any specific numbers, we are now thinking broadly and creatively, let me put it that way, to help identify what services need to be provided, what we're maybe not yet seeing, but may be apparent. So it's easy in retrospect to see what we didn't do and should do next time. It's not easy in real time to see crises or other kinds of issues or demands emerging that we need to be responding to. But right now, as we get into the end of October, into November, and into winter break, right now is when we solve the problem for fall 21 retention, meaning we identify and provide support for those students who need it so they can be successful in the next year.
And Karen, Matthew mentioned some of the challenges that some CSUN students are facing. I know at Valley College, you have a large percentage of students who are first in their family to attend college, and a not insignificant number of students who are in great economic stress and even homeless. So there are special challenges in trying to keep students who are facing those life challenges on track academically as well, and in your case, preparing for transfer, hopefully to a university, or preparing for a career certification. So talk to us a little bit, if you can, about what extra steps Valley College is taking to make sure people are staying on pace.
So we are involved in we have a new initiative that's associated with being able to make sure that students are being guided across their specific educational goal and pathways. We've identified various different milestones that we are inclusively going back to the students to make sure that they have actually met. So even though we are in this remote environment, that hasn't changed our direction in terms of making sure that we are in communication with the students and being very proactive going towards the students in terms of trying to reach out to them if we find that they are not enrolling into the next semester, or if they drop out and they haven't given us an explanation about why they were dropping out. We want to know why they are. We want to make sure that there's not some sort of resources or support systems that they need that they didn't think they had access to, but they could have access to. We had, during the COVID situation, the state of California community college system has allowed for a great amount of flexibility for the students to decide whether or not the reason why they could not finish is because of COVID related, and so they could get an emergency withdrawal, and that emergency withdrawal would not count against them and would not count with would not account against their amount of times that they would be able to take the class over again if they wanted to. We allowed for that option to be available to them so that it did not hurt their educational progress in case there was some sort of problem in spring or in fall to compromise their ability of being able to continue. So through those proactive efforts and those communications, those targeted messagings, being able to contact students through having a face-to-face conversation with the president, who has these regular YouTube conferences with the students and answering questions and dealing with any of their concerns or issues that they may be experiencing, and reaching out to them whenever we feel that they are dropping off and we don't know why, I think is one of the things that we've been trying to implement to try to be able to support our students during these tiring times.
Yes, Winston.
I would also just like to add in, there are a number of different dimensions to this challenge as well. So as we start thinking about the mental health of our student, and as my colleagues have talked about, it's pretty much at the top of everybody's plates these days. We have student health centers, we have counseling centers, but we also have a fact in the COVID world that our students are scattered all over, not only all over the state, but all over the country and all over the world. So we have students, international students, we have students all over the country, and can't necessarily access physically our counseling center or our student health center. So not only have we moved lots and lots virtually so that there are virtual appointments and all of that, but it's also true that clinical care is restricted state to state to state. So that we can't sit here in California and do virtual clinical care for a student that's in another state or it's in another country. So we're also having to adjust to try to help make sure that our students, wherever they are, have access to the appropriate health care where they are. We are also creating more and more virtual opportunities for students to engage that's not quite clinical, but groups, opportunities to talk. It's not clinical care such that it's licensed or whatnot, but it's opportunities for us to allow our students to engage and to gather. We're also on the academic side having to look at things as my colleagues talked about. So we've been considering pass, no pass sort of options in certain situations to try to relieve stress. We're extending deadlines on drop so that students have more time to sort of test the waters, so that students don't feel the same level of pressure to take as many hours maybe at the same time. We've also built programs so that students can make up classes during the summer and things like that without having to pay, so that we can keep people on track. So it's certainly a challenge to continue to operate and to do all of the things that our students and their families expect from us during a time like this. But we're working very hard in every way that we can. And I'm pretty confident, I'll have to say, that the actual education that our students are getting is top-notch.
So I want to shift gears just a little bit to talk about, though not your current students, but those young people who would really like to go to your institutions. And they are also in an unusual circumstance right now. The middle school and high school kids throughout Los Angeles who have an entirely different experience now than what has typically been the case. And we've always encouraged young people to get involved in a lot of extracurricular activities so that your college application will look better, and do a number of these sorts of things to prepare the application, to prepare to be a more competitive applicant for colleges and universities. And they have far fewer opportunities to do those sorts of things now. Can't go to band, can't participate in sports often, can't do the kinds of service hours that they might have done. So I know that none of the three of you are here as admissions officers, and I want to make that clear. But just as a general observation, what advice or recommendations would you give for young people who are looking forward to going to college when they don't have those sorts of opportunities this year that they might have in past years? Why don't we go with Matthew, and then we'll go to Winston.
I could speak to this. So first let me say, and to any students or parents who are watching this and are appropriately concerned about next year, we are open. All of our campuses, community college, state universities, University of California, privates like USC, and we are working hard to ensure, as Winston said, that you can have confidence that the quality of the educational experience remains high. That is accurate, that is true. One of the things we're finding is that many students are having, and this is counterintuitive, a better educational experience in the online environment than they might have had in the face-to-face, because they have an opportunity to engage with the instructor and with other students in a different way. This doesn't mean that we want to stay online forever, of course not, but it does mean that we are learning quickly about how to integrate digital tools alongside those traditional approaches such that we can arrive at a better balance of educational outcomes and educational experiences that serve students. So while we in the past have often used the phrase, oh, this is a disaster, right now COVID quite literally is a disaster. And we understand that the impact of that is going to hit many segments and many sectors of the university or college experience. With that in mind, though, I want our students who will be coming to us next year and our current students, including my son, who is a first-time freshman at Cal State Northridge just by chance this year, to have the confidence to know that the experience is going to be better than they think it's going to be, and it's going to continue to get better because we are responding in real time to the kinds of challenges that are impacting that educational experience. But also to keep in mind, we're not going to be in COVID forever. We hope, certainly on our campus, that we're going to be able to bring more students onto campus in spring semester, and as we get into next year, that we're going to be moving forward and getting back into what we all expect to be a meaningful college and university experience.
And I won't repeat anything that Matthew has said. I agree with him completely. But to the point that you were making, Councilman, about the inability to sort of engage at the high school level and in all of the extracurriculars to sort of build the application in a way that people are used to, I would say a number of things to our students, potential students, and to parents that are out there. So first of all, as Matthew said, the campuses are open. You can still tour. You can't necessarily visit and run around like you were used to, but we've moved all of our campus tours to virtual. You can get a very strong introduction to and orientation to any of these universities through these virtual guidances. I'm also cognizant of how challenging it is and how much stress gets added from just the anxiety about getting into college is high enough before COVID. It's even worse now. But there are many schools out here that are anticipating and allowing for students to submit their applications in this next cycle without the SAT or the ACT if they would like to. We have added, for example, a section in the Common App so that students can talk about the impact of COVID-19 on their life and on their application. So I think there are going to be plenty of opportunities for students to show and to still engage with the schools so that they have a great opportunity and as good an opportunity as they can. And I don't want people to lose that. We also have high hopes that we are going to be able to continue to bring more and more people back onto campus, and that by the time fall 2021 starts around, we'll at least be in very strong a hybrid situation, if not back online. But even if we are still in this sort of situation, to help people to understand that it's different, and we are all learning together how to make the best of this, but we're also learning lessons and building technologies and building capabilities that we hadn't even thought about doing before COVID that will even enhance the educational opportunities that people are getting.
Karen, did you want to add
Yes,
your advice to high school students who are looking forward to college right now?
Right, absolutely. And so one of the things I wanted to add is that at Valley College, we have done an extensive amount of outreach to high school students, our neighboring high schools, because we want to offer the college experience to them. In the past, it was through a face-to-face sort of situation, but now we are doing it remotely as well. I also want to do a call out to our faculty who has really gone over and beyond in terms of collaboration, communication, working on very creative solutions to be able to provide various different kinds of solutions to activity-based courses and laboratory courses to be able to bring a good simulated experience to the students while we are in this situation. So I feel that there is a message of hope here in terms of our high school students to be able to say to them, this is temporary. We have a lot of different ways of being able to bring you in right now to continue on to your activities as well as your educational careers when you move on to your next level of your institution of the college that you're going to be going to. But at the same time, there's a lot of different types of remote activities that are available for them that, again, will allow them to be able to have that kind of interaction and that exposure and connection to their faculty and to the college community so that they know what to expect when we finally get the okay to move back to on-campus services and on-campus classroom experiences and activities like in athletics and theater productions and music productions and things like that, which is very, very exciting for our future.
Karen, one of the Valley College does a tremendous job of preparing its students for transfer to four-year universities. It also does a tremendous job of preparing students who maybe aren't planning to go to a university to be the skilled workforce of the San Fernando Valley and our region for the future. And I'm wondering, our economy is certainly going to change in some respects because of COVID-19, and some of those changes will likely be long-lasting. New industries and kinds of workplaces may arise that we're not really experiencing yet, but will come. New opportunities, new job opportunities may arise as a result of it. I'm wondering if you've given any thought to that yet, and how maybe educational institutions can start to align to prepare students for the workforce of the future, whatever the post-COVID-19 future may hold.
One of the positives of a pandemic is that it does allow you to be exposed to different ideas and experiments in terms of what the future is going to be holding. And we have been putting a lot of thought on that. We have noticed that there's going to be probably, even after we have a vaccine and people are able to have a little bit more flexibility and coming onto the campuses and doing other types of activities across our city, that there are going to be certain kinds of activities that probably are going to remain the same, because we have found out through our our conversion into remote services and classroom instruction, that there is actually some benefit and flexibility for a lot of our student population in having those kinds of activities be remote and online. Going along with that, there's going to be changes in terms of how businesses are going to be operated. There's going to be changes in terms of how supervision and management is going to be taking place. So since we've been having these sort of experiences, we have been working with our departments to think about different types of certificates and skills training that they can actually offer to students to allow them to be very prepared for working and managing in remote kind of environments. So that's a little bit of a change in the industry that I think is going to be taking place. I think also we find that the health services sector, it really has increased in demand significantly, and that we have always known that we have been sort of deficient in the amount of trained students who are getting their certificates and getting their degrees, to be able to move into those career opportunities in the health sectors. And we have been really proactively working to be able to build some more capacity at the campuses to be able to allow for a larger amount of students to served in those kinds of sectors. So I do think that the pandemic does allow us to be able to think about what the future is going to be, even after it dissipates, and allows us to also be more prepared into the future when we find that we might have another emergency, to be able to pivot and transition as soon as possible to be able to meet those new demands that will be coming in our community.
Great. We have just a couple minutes left, but and thank you for that, Karen. I always like to finish these conversations up on a positive and optimistic, forward-looking note, and that answer certainly provides one. And I'd like to ask Winston and Matthew to give us some of your thoughts, just in the last couple of minutes that we have, about how you think this experience may provide long-term benefits for higher education in terms of accessibility, potentially affordability. One of the major crises of our generation is the affordability of higher education. And how might what we're learning right now through COVID-19 help to address some of those problems, or otherwise have a positive impact on the future of higher education?
I'll be somewhat brief. I know we're getting close to time, but I appreciate that question. There's a saying that you never let a disaster go without trying to turn it into opportunity, right? And from disaster can come opportunity. And I think that that's been true here. Don't get me wrong, or Karen or Matthew or anyone else. We all, just like everybody else, would have been much happier if we never had to deal with this and things were going. But having said that, this pandemic and these adjustments, the uncertainty, the having to change plans and having to adjust, is pushing universities at every level and all across the nation to sort of be creative and to think of new ways and of addressing our students. I had a conversation, I don't know, a week or so ago with some of the faculty from some of our more technical oriented areas who were very concerned going in that how are we supposed to teach these things online and virtually, and who have found in many ways that they are finding new and innovative and creative and wonderful ways of imparting information and of dealing with this that we most certainly will keep. So I think and I hope to leave this on a very positive note, that as we move back towards more of a full-time, where appropriate, presence on campuses, that not only will people be getting the benefit of the campus experience that they've always wanted and always hoped for and dreamed of, but that it will be even better, because we will have more technology and more services and more things that we have learned how to do during this time period.
Terrific. Well, we all look forward to that day when we're past this crisis and able to take advantage of better opportunities and a better city and a better higher education system than we had before. So I want to thank all of you for being with us today. Winston Crisp from the University of Southern California, Karen Darr from LA Valley College, and Matthew Kahn from Cal State Northridge. Thank you very much for your role in educating the leaders of the future, and thank you very much for being with us today. And to all of us who are watching at home, thank you very much for joining me for another one of our forums on higher education. We'll be joining you again soon, and I look forward to seeing you next time. I'm Councilmember Paul Krekorian. Thank you very much for being with us.